Hello everyone and welcome to the Arbor Farm. Thank you for joining us for today's episode where I want to share with you how we make our low tunnels without any hoop benders or expensive tools. Let's get started. So if you're new to gardening or flower farming or growing your own vegetables or growing anything outside, you might be wondering what exactly is the point of all of those little low tunnels that you might see. Well, the purpose is to use them for season extenders. For example, we use them for our flowers, obviously, but there are some flowers that do better being outside in the early spring. They thrive from the fluctuation in temperatures. The warm during the day, the cold at night, the back and forth, the up and down in the temperature. For example, our feverfew, our snapdragons, and their delphinium, larkspur. There are a variety of flowers that we grow that benefit from being outside. But the issue is they cannot tolerate significantly cold. For example, today the high is 72 degrees, but later next week the high is only going to be 36 degrees, which means the lows are going to be about 20 degrees. They can't withstand that cold 20-degree temperature, so we have to protect them from the extreme cold. And so the way to do that is to use the low tunnels. Now, low tunnels can be taken on and off depending on the weather. So later today we might roll back the cover when it warms up and put it back on if it's going to be 25 degrees or less. So keep them on if it's 25 degrees or less, but if it's nice and warm, you can pull those back and allow them to get the sun. The other neat thing about the agricultural frost cloth is that it allows rain to go through and it allows sunlight to go through. It's sort of a mesh covering that's made specifically to protect your plants from frost, but at the same time allow those nutrients, the sun and the rain through that those plants need. I'm going to be honest with you, this is our third year using low tunnels for early spring, and I have struggled with getting them to work and getting them to work well. Some of the flimsy metal hoops that you see online are too flimsy. They collapse, they bend easily, the wind will topple them over. So those didn't work well for us. And so I wanted to come up with something that would work well. The other thing that I've struggled with is the spring wind here in Zone 6 in southern Michigan can be quite brutal. And today the wind is mostly gentle and you can see the covers here flapping in the wind. And so I've struggled with keeping the covers on, but this year I finally came up with a solution that works, and I thought perhaps there are other people who want a reasonably priced solution that you can make yourself and make it quite simply, so I wanted to share this with you and I hope it's helpful. I also wanted to mention that if you are someone who grows in raised beds, you can use some clamps and actually screw your hoops right to the edge of your raised bed. So this is not for folks who have raised beds necessarily, although it could work. But with our beds being flat to the ground, this is a different solution that we had to come up with, not having anything to clamp the hoops to. So here's our list of supplies. I will put a link down in the description below to each of these supplies so that you can see which ones we use. don't feel like you have to purchase from that link, but I want you to have it so that you can see which ones I'm talking about. So first of all, to make the hoops, we use this 1/2 inch PVC, and it's Charlotte pipe. We get it at the Home Depot or Lowe's, and these are 10 feet long. You can get more bang for your buck by getting the 10-foot long piece, and so I'll show you in a moment how we use that. So 1/2 inch PVC Charlotte pipe. And then the other thing you're going to need is some kind of saw to cut with. You could easily use a hand saw, like a hacksaw. For our purposes, I have a battery operated saw, so that's an option too. You're going to need a drill, a permanent marker, pair of scissors, and I like to use a torch, but matches also work. And then you'll want a hammer, a measuring tape. I use nylon string, but any string will do the job. And then these stakes, they're 10 inches long with a little knob at the top. They look like great big nails, are what we use to hold the hoops in the ground. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do to set up our hoops is to cut our PVC, and we just use 5 foot, but if you are growing something that's going to get taller before the weather gets warm, you can cut them longer, but I just cut every 10-foot piece in half. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm lining up all of my pipes so that I can just measure at once. And so I'm making sure the ends are all about the same. And obviously if I'm a little bit off, it's not going to matter much. So since I want my pipes to all be about 5 foot long, I'm going to take my tape measure then and measure the 5 feet. And then I just go across all of the pipes with my Sharpie marker, and they are ready to be cut. All right, I'm ready to cut my pipe, and just to reiterate, you could totally use a hacksaw and do this by hand. These are about $10 at the home improvement store, so you don't have to invest big bucks. But I already happen to have this, so I'm going to use this one just for ease of use today. So there's 1, 2, 5 feet pipes, and I'm just going to keep going. Now that I have my hoop pieces cut into 5 foot lengths, the next thing I need to do is drill a hole in the end of each one so that I can use my string to keep the agricultural frost cloth from blowing away in the wind. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. So the size of the drill bit that you use for this doesn't necessarily matter. I'm just using one about that size. And I put my hole, about 1 inch or 1.5 inches from the end of the piece of PVC. And I'm going to go all the way through, so I need a hole on this side and it comes out the other side. So like that, a hole here and it comes out the other side. And I'm gonna do that on this end as well as the other end. Okay, I can do that to all of the pieces now. And once I finish that, I'll show you the next step. Now that I have all of my PVC pieces cut to length, and they all have holes in each end that go all the way through, this is where the string comes into play. Now the string's job is to keep the cover, the frost cloth, from blowing it away in the wind. And this is a really important step. You don't want to skip this. So what I do is I've got a fresh cut here. I'm using nylon string, but again, probably any kind of string will work. And in order to get my tip of my string through here without it fraying, I just burn the end, and then I go ahead and I'm gonna feed it through. Okay, I'm feeding this, or attempting to feed this through here. All right, here comes out the other side. So I have my string looped through here, and now I need to take it both sides all the way down to the other end. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna feed it through this end. Using the end that I burned so that hopefully it doesn't fray. Okay, so I have the string going down both sides all the way down the pipe. And I'm ready to cut this off now, and I'm gonna tie it in a knot. Alright, I can tie this in a knot, and then this pipe will be done and ready to be used. Want to make sure your strings are nice and snug all the way down. And so this one, let you have a look there. My string straight down both sides, and it's tied at the end to keep it snug. So you can do that for all of your pipes, and then I'll show you how to stake them and bend them and put them in the ground. Next step is to install our stakes. Now these stakes are specifically the right size for the hoop to fit on the end of them. So again, I'll link to these in the description below so you can see which ones I'm using. They're 10 inches long. And as far as the distance to space our hoops apart, I do about 4 to 6 feet, but that can vary, and it's just, I guess you might say, a randomness as far as how far I space them. I just eyeball it to see what I think is going to work well. When I install the stake into the ground, I pound it on an angle because I found that, you know, the shape of the arc, the hoop, that's helpful. So I'm gonna go ahead and install our hoops. So I leave it sticking up I don't know, maybe 2.5 inches out of the ground. Then I'm gonna walk down here about 4 to 6 feet and put in the next one. Now my pipes are ready to go on, and I can just put them on each stake. The next part is to bend the hoop and put the other end on the other stake. Now I recommend keeping your face away from this just to avoid a mishap. So there's my first hoop, and you don't need to worry about the string quite yet. Let's go bend the rest. So our hoops are in place, and at this point I would generally want to have my plants in place. There is nothing on this planted on this row yet. We're going to put some perennial seedlings in there, some flowers, but normally at this point you'd want to have your stuff planted either before you install your hoops or immediately after. And so our next thing is to add our agricultural frost cloth. I'll put a link to the one that I use in the description below. You can see it lets the sun through, it lets the rain through, but it protects it from getting shocked by frost and potentially killed. So the string is an important part in adding our frost cloth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that string up above the top of the hoop, and it's going to hold the frost cloth in place between the hoop. So in essence, to keep it from blowing away in the wind. So here we go. And the way I've designed this is so that I can have a string on each side of the hoop to keep it from blowing away. Sometimes you might need to grab a hold of your string, tie a knot, and tighten it, but I'm gonna go ahead and lay out the frost cloth first before I decide if I need to tighten my string. So I've got my frost cloth ready to be pulled up and over the hoop. It is between the string and the hoop. So again, with a string on each side of the hoop. So as I was pulling my cloth tight, I did realize that I had some slack in my string, and I just grabbed it and any point on the string, made a loop, and then made a knot to tighten it. So to help keep it tight and to keep the cloth from blowing away. So wind is a significant issue that we deal with our tunnels. We try to keep the top from blowing away. We try to keep the top from sagging and bedding on our plants. That's not good either. If the cloth touches the plants and there's a frost, it can hinder them rather than help them. So what we like to do to help with that is to grab the end. So I give the end a nice twist to keep it tight, making sure my edges are down to cover the plants. I give it a nice twist, and then I find a good sized rock and I put it there, and that helps to keep it nice and tight and to keep it from blowing away. Just to show you the view from the side here so you can see how this all works. Underneath here is my stake, and my hoop fits over the top of the stake. I have strings on each side of my hoop, and my frost cloth goes between the hoop and the string, with a string on each side to keep it from blowing away. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. Our goal is to always create content that's helpful for you. And if you found today's content helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel so that you can receive notifications as to when the next content is available. And as always, if you have questions or comments, please drop those below, as we are happy to engage with you and we read every single one. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.